Hey y'all, and welcome back to another Photoshop tutorial. My name is Jane Corley with PicVision's Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome. Every Monday we go over tips, tools, and techniques on how to become a better post-production artist in Adobe Photoshop. Today's episode is all about infants and newborn photography. If you have any questions about the tools and techniques we use in this video, please feel free to look back at my previous videos on this playlist to get some more in-depth information on the Photoshop workflow. So let's get started. This right here is little Mr. Finley. He's just an adorable little baby I had the pleasure of shooting. And this shot was a purposeful to show length shot. If you've been watching our Photography Friday episodes, on last Friday we talked all about babies, infants, and newborn photography techniques and how to become a successful baby, infant, or newborn photographer, how to do your business and do your marketing and all that good stuff. So check that out if you're interested. As we've done in all of our Photoshop tutorials, we will first and foremost duplicate our background layer. You can click and hold on the background layer and drag it down to the new layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Next, I'm going to go through a few of my very favorite adjustment layers before we get into the other basic tools. First and foremost, I'm going to do levels. Levels, as we've learned, has a shadow, midtones, and a highlight slider. By holding the Alt or Option key and dragging on these sliders, it will create a white canvas. Moving the sliders to the left or to the right in the shadows area, it will expose the shadows. I want to get it just until they get clipping in the darkest of dark areas, and we'll leave it there. Same with the whites. We have a lot more whites blown out, but let's just take a look. We're going to do the same exact thing. All that extra white, that's clipping, especially in the greens and the reds that you see there, that is clipping. So we don't want to push it all the way up because then it's going to look really bad. So we're going to pull it down until just we see a light dusting of the white. That way we get pure whites in some areas. We'll fix this area up here in just a few moments, but that should be good for our shadows, midtones, and highlight adjustment, just for an overall adjustment. Next, I'm going to move into vibrance. Vibrance is a great way to choose the vibrance of the colors in the image as well as the saturation of the image. If you take the saturation all the way down, of course, that's going to be a black and white photo. If you take it all the way up, it's going to be extra saturated. So we want to take it up just until it looks good on his skin and we don't lose too much in his little outfit, and we don't have too much of that veining in his legs. But the vibrance is where it's at. You want to make the colors much more rich, much more vibrant. So that should be good right there. Then I'm going to go into a color balance layer. A color balance layer we're going to pair with a mask. This area over here is a mask, of course. You can invert the mask by hitting Control I, but we'll get to that in just a moment. What I want to do is I want to focus on his skin tone. I want to get his skin tone evened out a little bit, and I want to give him a little bit more of the red in his skin. That way he has a little bit more of a fleshy tone. So I'm going to bump my reds minor, and then I'm going to bump my magentas by not much at all, and then I'm going to bring my yellows down away from the blue to compensate, like so, and that smooths it out. You can click on and off the eyeball just to kind of see how your work is going as you progress. We'll shut that properties panel down. Next, I'm going to make a few minor adjustments. This area here and this area here where we've lost a little bit of content. So go back down to your background copy layer and hit S for sponge, or locate it on the tool panel here. We're going to hit the Alt or Option key if you're on a Mac and select an area to stamp from or to clone from. We're going to bring this information up here, and I actually find that it is a little bit more successful if you create a new layer. Create a new layer, totally empty, nothing in it. Then we're going to come up here and paint on content from below. Paint on what we are sampling from down here. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but I need to take another sample. So I'll come back to my background copy, hit Alt or Option to select, and then click, come back up to my empty layer, and then paint on. This is a great reason why I have created another layer. You see we have a stripe down here. E for eraser. Your opacity is at 20%. Hit Enter or Return, and you can type in a different number value. And I'm going to slowly erase until it blends into the background content, like so, until it looks natural. What a difference. Erase a little bit more. You can always adjust your opacity up here if you would like, but 10% between 10 and 20% for minor adjustments I find is pretty successful. Next, while we have the clone stamp tool out, I'm going to fix this corner over here. This blue right here is really great because it's a contrast to the white and it doesn't just flood this whole image with white. I like having that blue area up there. If I didn't like it, I could clone down here and put it up there as well. But I'm going to clone stamp from this blue area, and I'm simply just going to fill that space in until it is solid blue and you don't see the end of the pillow. Next, I'm going to fix his little uniform. It's a little bit blown out in some areas, so I want to fix it so he's got some depth and shadow and you can tell where he starts and the blanket starts. So I'm going to come up to another levels adjustment. Here's where we're about to get into some masking. If you've never masked before, welcome to the party. Masking is a great way to make select adjustments on select portions of the image. So what I want to do is just focus on this little shirt that he's wearing. I'm going to adjust my shadows so that I have darker shadows. I know his skin is making him look like a little alien baby, but we're not going to pay attention to that. We're only going to pay attention to his shirt. That's pretty good. We got some really great shadows in here. We've got a little area we need to fix right here as well, where there might have been some string or dust on the scanner when we imported the photo. Now what we need to do is come over and make sure we're clicked on our mask and hit Control I. That's Command I if you are on a Mac. We're going to go B for brush, and if we remember from our mask and adjustment layers video, white will reveal your mask and black will conceal your mask. So with your brush selected, an opacity, let's do 20%, so I'm going to hit enter or return and hit 20. Now my brush, I have a soft brush, which is great, exactly what I want. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger with my right bracket, and I'm slowly going to paint this white color on, exposing that mask. You see over here on this mask panel, I've got a little white stripe, meaning that I am exposing that mask. The reason why I go at a lower opacity is because now it's a controlled adjustment. I can see this adjustment populating slowly, so it's very controlled. Now I do see some areas where there's some purple coming in, which is totally fine. We can absolutely fix that. Right now I'm just focused on adding shadows to the area. We don't want to darken too many of these shadows. We just want to bring it in so there is separation between his little top and his little legs and his little uniform. I may even bring some of these shadows in around on the blanket where he's laying, just to add a little bit of extra depth to the image. Around his head, just making a full circle around him, all the way around, to make him physically look like he's sitting inside this blanket. Now in these areas around his head, I did go a little bit over. If you do happen to make a mistake, simply hit your X to switch to your black and paint to conceal that mask back up, like so. Same on his little legs, like so. Now this purpley color in here, what we're going to do now is we're going to perform another mask with a color balance adjustment. We want to come away from the magentas. That's a little bit too much green. And we want to come away from the blues with just a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow. Then Control or Command I to invert the mask. B for brush, we're good to go. And then we're going to select X to switch from our foreground and background color. You can also use this little arrow here, but the hotkey is just the letter X. Then we're going to come in these purpley areas. Opacity, I'm going to say 5 because I want to make small adjustments. And simply just brush on until those purples disappear and they turn right back into shadows. Small adjustments, small controlled adjustments, like so. Now if you don't get the look that you're looking for with this technique, you can always come back down to your background copy and then use what's called the burn tool. The burn is going to burn shadows into the image, very much like identical to an enlarger if you're doing film processing, if that's something you're familiar with. By exposing the image to more light, you are burning more light into the image, creating more darkness. Bring it all the way around. I may even bring it into the texture down here just to give us a little bit more texture in that background. Like so. and he looks great. Next, I'm going to make an adjustment that's going to make all the difference in the world. It's totally a game changer for babies, for people. If you're not using it already, it's something very, very nice to know. Hit I for eyedropper, and this is going to perform a color sample. Color sample from a highlight area, then hit X to switch to your background color, is now your foreground color, and we're going to select a shadow area. So you have a highlight color and a shadow color. B for brush. 5% opacity, we could probably go up to 10, but I'm going to leave it at 5 just so it's controlled. And I'm going to start with my highlight, so I need to hit X again to switch to my foreground color. And I'm going to slowly paint on in the highlight areas. This is really great for getting rid of glare as well. Make your brush a little bit smaller with your left bracket and paint in these areas to smooth out the skin. Make sure not to change the integrity of the face shape though. It's very, very easy to do. We want to make little Finley look like little Finley. We just want to make his skin a little bit smoother and a little bit more even. Now we'll take it to the thigh up here to get a few of those circulation lines out. Like so. Then we're going to switch to our background color, so simply hit the letter X on your keyboard and paint on the same way that you did with the highlight color. Make sure not to change the shape of his face. Adjusting your brush size as you need to. Control Z and Control Alt Z will step you back and then step you another step back, and you can infinity Control Alt Z like so. Paint on his thigh as well, and on his little foot. Not too much, just enough. Next, let's get rid of a few of these blemishes and a few of these issues around. We'll use the spot healing brush tool. The command is J as in Juliet, the spot healing brush tool. Making small swipes because we have a lot of content we don't want to mess up. Small adjustments. We're going to click and make those small adjustments. You can do the same thing right here on his forehead where he may have been crying a little bit earlier, and just blend those trouble spots out. This is also really great for baby acne and other small adjustments if you just need to blend it in. These areas here as well on his little uniform where it doesn't look favorable. It's distracting elements. Like so, and we'll get all those little trouble spots out of the way. Next I want to focus on his eyes, because the eyes and the face, even though we are showcasing the length and just really the details and the growth and the development, that's what newborn and baby photography is all about, is capturing those small details. So first and foremost, we want to focus on the eyes. A great way to focus on the eyes is by using your sharpening tool. We're going to come into the area of his eyes and just really bump up those hollows. Like so, and really let him sing. I even like to come onto the lips, and we'll make our brush a little bit bigger, and we're going to bring in a little bit more on the hair. As you see the pixelation here, so you gotta be really careful not to go overboard on the sharpening. Further with the eyes, I'm going to bring in my dodge tool. Opposite of the burn tool, the dodge tool is actually going to dodge light, creating more highlights. So, coming around just where the pupils are, you don't want to go into this hollow area because eyes are round, and as soon as you bring all the white down here, and his eyes are going to be flat. So you don't want to flatten the eyes. You want to just bring up a little bit more in the highlight area and really just make them pop. Control 0 to zoom all the way out. And one last trick before we move to our next image. Try Control Alt Shift the letter E. If you're on a Mac, it's Command Option Shift the letter E. This is going to take a sample of everything underneath and make a copy up top. I like using this because this gives you a before and after. So this is an after and this is before. After, before. Let's move on to our next image. This is little Naya. She is such a diva, if you can't tell from this photo. She's just absolutely adorable. So we're going to go through the same step of duplicating our background. This is because we want to have a background negative and we want to have a preserved, non-destructive copy of it to make all of our adjustments on, just in case we need to bring anything back. We'll go through the same adjustments. I'm going to go with my levels, hit your Alt or Option key, and get the key for where your darkest darks are. Same with the highlights, like so. We're going to bring it down just a little bit, like so, and we'll bring this area back up here. I just wanted to preserve some of these highlights here in the back, but I do want to accentuate some of these feathers and the accessories she has to show how much of a diva she is. She's just so cute. Next is going to be our vibrance. The vibrance, I'm going to focus on this bow area up here and then her skin. So we want to make sure her vibrance is brought up and her saturation is brought up, just to show the delightful tone of her skin. Next is going to be our color balance. Color balance we're going to bring towards the reds because she has the dark, beautiful skin. Bring it down to the magentas and down into the yellows, just to give that fleshy tone. Yellows is really great for the fleshy tone, reds is really great for pink in the cheeks, and magentas is really great for darker skin. Next we're going to start our masking process. I'm going to start with a levels mask. What I want to do is I want to bring out a little bit more detail in this area up here of her headband. So that's the only place I'm going to focus on. Hitting my Alt or Option key until that information starts to populate in her bow. Like so. Control I to invert the mask. B for brush. I'm going to switch to 10% opacity, hitting my Enter or Return button and setting my numerical value. Then, making sure I'm on B for brush, white to reveal, simply paint on in the areas which you wish to reveal. I want to get some more of these feathered areas. I want to get some of this bow back here in the back. The top of this bow area right here. Really just separate it from the background. Like so. It gives such a great framing to the image, having this extra detail popped out. And as I said, you can always hit X to switch back your colors here and paint back on that mask, concealing the mask. That looks so much better. We're going to continue on with our white over here and make sure we got all these feathers down here that we want, really framing the image. Like so. Bring some down from this area here where they're lost in these highlights. Bring it out. And if you're not getting the results that you want fast enough, feel free to increase your opacity by simply hitting Enter or Return and typing a higher numerical value. So while I have this levels adjustment, a darkening levels adjustment, I am going to come in and darken these areas behind her, further framing her in this image. It's not going to be something very obvious, it's just kind of tricking the viewer's eye and directing it into the image. You want to make this the area of focus. Next we're going to bump up her eyes using the Dodge tool on your background copy. I'm going to dodge light on the highest part of her eyes, like so, even down here in this little crease and around, like so. Then we're going to take some of this red out of her cheeks and out of her hands and really just even out her skin tone. So we'll do that with a color balance. We will pull away from the reds, we'll pull away from the magentas, and we'll pull towards the yellows. Control I to invert the mask, B for brush. I'm going to bring it on her lips with the white brush and on her hands to make those colors and those tonalities just a little less distracting. Now, instead of going over with a highlight and a shadow color using the eyedropper tool, What we're going to do is we're going to put a blur filter and smooth out her skin, because she has a little bit of baby acne on her cheeks and a few bumps on her head and just some areas that we want to smooth out on her arms. So we'll use what I like to call the claw move, the copy one that we used on little Finley. Control Alt Shift E as in everything, or Command Option Shift E as in everything. Then we'll come up to our File tabs and hit Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. This is going to give you a full preview of the result of the filter. So if you go all the way down, it's no filter. If you go all the way up, it's totally blurred out. You can't see anything. So you want to find an area where her skin is smooth. It may look a little bit drastic in some areas, but you want to use this filter guide and this preview here, make sure this box is checked if it's not, to the most extensive blur that you're wanting. This area up here, I know it looks really blurred, but we can actually make an adjustment not at 100% using a mask. So that looks pretty good to me. What I'm going to do is just hit OK. Make sure this layer is selected here, and come down to your layers panel down here and hit this one right here. It's like a square with a circle inside. It's called a mask. It will create a mask, just like these adjustment layer masks. It will create a mask for you that now you can hit Control or Command I to invert the mask. Same thing with our masks from below. We're going to do white to reveal, and I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm at 20% opacity. I actually want to do 10% opacity. And we're going to slowly brush on this blur and smooth out her skin. This is really great for these blown out highlight areas because it just makes it look a whole lot more natural. Just come around the image and make these small strokes. If you get it on her eyes, that's totally fine, because we can always just blur out the mask. So we'll slowly move around the image and make our small adjustments, bringing it down to her arms, like so. And you don't want to take all of the wrinkles and folds out of these adorable little baby arms, the little chunks. So make sure not to rob her of that, but you just want to make sure that her skin looks soft and that this baby acne is no longer apparent. So now we're going to hit X to conceal the mask, and I'm actually going to make sure I didn't get anything on her eyes or her eyelashes, because she's got some beautiful eyelashes, and reveal those areas. I'm sorry, conceal that area of the mask, further revealing the image underneath. Like so on her eyebrows, and I'm going to do it right inside her mouth so you have that nice wet tongue in there. I'm going to bring it underneath her nose as well, just to bring that depth and definition back into the image where the blur may have taken it away. You can always click on and off the eyeball, and if something is just too blurred or too changed, just go over it slightly with the conceal brush and just make sure that it's picture perfect. You want it exactly the way you want it. Next, I'm going to come down here in this area and make these pearls down here pop. So I'm going to use my dodge tool. The dodge tool is the opposite of the burn tool. It's actually going to dodge and accentuate more of the highlights, so the whites, the highlights. Then I'm going to take my sharpening tool here and just come across her eyes a few times and sharpen her eyes and her eyelashes like so, further making that the focus of the image and the focal point. We'll do one more claw move, Control Alt Shift E, Command Option Shift E to get a before and after. And that's the after, and that's before. After, before. So I do hope that this video was helpful on how to perform post-production techniques on infant and newborn photography. A lot of these tips and techniques can be further used on any sort of portraits or landscapes or whatever kind of techniques you're using, but the one thing runs true: shoot in RAW. If you are not shooting in RAW, make the adjustment and shoot in RAW. Because a lot of these adjustments, the color balance, the overall adjustments that I needed to make to this image were done in RAW. If you have questions about how to adjust in RAW, I have a video on RAW from a few weeks ago. Feel free to take a look at that. And then Photoshop or Lightroom, that's used for smaller adjustments, for blurring the skin, for bringing out more detail in certain accessories, for sharpening certain areas where you're not sharpening other areas. So make sure that you're shooting in RAW and make sure that you're making those adjustments before you bring images into Adobe Photoshop. So make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell if you have not done so already. Also, feel free to share this video with your fellow post-production artists, and make sure to tune in next week when we go over another awesome tutorial on post-production techniques. I'm Jane Corley with PicVisions. See you later, guys.